don't know what's a harder day to wake up early, December 25th or Erev Pesach or Shushan Purim. Okay. We're holding on Tzaddik Testament base. And we got a little further, but I think we should go back to Montana, Anina Slaila Midirabanan. It's the beginning of a line, probably middle of the page, drop below the middle of the page. That's where it is. Okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day. Because of our learning, we should have the base of Migdash. What happened here? And it switches volumes every 20 pages.
Yeah, exactly up to there. No good.
Okay. So we had mentioned that there's a contradiction. In our Mishnah, it says that an Einain does not get an allotted portion. He doesn't get his own portion. But if someone would invite him, he would be able to eat. We have a Mishnah in Psachim. I think it's a Mishnah or Brisa in Psachim that says that an Einain could eat the carbon Pesach, but he can't eat other karbanos. Now, 1 second. By us, we were talking about any carbon. So, best we say that he could eat a carbon, he just doesn't get a portion. And in Pesach, it says, no, there's a special exception for Pesach, but karbanos he can't eat. So the contradiction is other karbanos, by us seems to be that he can eat. In Mishnah Psachim says other karbanos he can't eat. So we gave different answers for this. One of the answers was that if it's Pesach night, then you're allowed to eat, which would mean our Mishnah is talking about Pesach night. The Mishnah Psachim is talking about the rest of the year. It's like a funny thing. But anyway, that would be an answer. Who was that answer? That was Rabbi Yirmiyah Midifti. Rabasi says it depends when his close relative died. We're talking about an Einain, right? So a close relative died. If he died on the 14th, then we would say that the aninus of that night is a deraisa. If he dies on the 13th and the burial is on the 14th, then we would say that the aninus of that night that it's not even a derabanan.
Yeah,
it's not even a derabanan, and then we would allow him to eat the sacrifices. That would be the Mishnah by us. Okay, now not a Kohen Gadol. No. Kohen Gadol, the difference with Kohen Gadol is you can do the service, but even by the Kohen Gadol, he wouldn't be eating. You could do the service. Anyway, now the Gemara says a regular kind we're talking about. Man Tana Aninas Laila Midirabanan. Who says that the Aninas of night is rabbinic? Only by the day it's biblical. We say Reb Shimon, it's the opinion of Reb Shimon. The Tanya was started in a Brisa, Aninas Laila. Let me see where this is over here. Aninas Laila Midivrei Torah, Divrei Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds that Aninas at night is biblical. Reb Shimon Aimer Einain Midivrei Torah Midivrei Seifrim. It's missing the word by night, but that's the main point. Right. Einain by night is not midivrei Torah, it's only midivrei seifrim, it's only from the words of the scribes, which is referring to the sages, it's the rabbinic. Teida, and Reb Shimon proves his point to Rabbi Yehuda. Reb Shimon and Rabbi Yehuda are friends, they're students of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Yehuda says that it's a derais, Reb Shimon says it's the Rabban. I'll prove it to you, Shrei Amru, because they said, Einain toivel ba'ichelas pischei la'erev avalei b'kadshim. He said that an Einain is allowed to eat his carbon Pesach. Not Kachim, but it's not even carbon. So according to Reb Shimon, he wouldn't even be allowed to eat the carbon Pesach if it would be a deraisa. The fact that he can't eat the Kachim, even though it's Aninas is only derabanan, and eating the other karbanos is also derabanan. We would say is also is a mitzvah saseh to eat karban, to eat from the karban. We would say that we would say it like this. We would say that even though the mitzvah saseh deraisa would be stronger than a derabanan, but no, the derabanan can tell you don't fulfill a certain mitzvah, not a mitzvah that has kares, not a karban pesach. But it's not a mitzvah. They could tell you don't do it. They could tell you don't wear tefillin at night. Maybe it's a mitzvah saseh to put on tefillin at night. The rabbi said don't wear tefillin at night. You might not keep it holy. The rabbis can tell you not to do something. Okay, so Reb Shimon holds that it's rabbinic. What? Oh, interesting. Hill gives the example of nittel the rabbi said not to learn. Yeah, that is going to get me into trouble. It's a very political thing. Okay, depends which community you belong to. Okay. Reb Shimon Anil Slilam the Rabbanan. The Gemara asks, does Reb Shimon really hold that Anina Slila, that the Aninas at night is only rabbinic? Tanya, but it was taught in a Bryce. Reb Shimon Aimer. Shimon says, Einan Mishalech Karbanaisav, and Einan cannot send his Karbanas. Gemara says, my love, Afilu Pesach. Sounds like even he can't send any Karbanas, even a Karban Pesach. Now, because he wouldn't be allowed to eat it. Obviously, Anina Slila is a deraisa. The Gemara says, "Lai labarmi Pesach." That's not a proof. That was talking about all sacrifices besides for the Karban Pesach. The Karban Pesach he can still send. Okay. The Gemara asks, "Vatanya Reb Shimon Aimer Shlamim." Now this is a rather long brisa, and it's only at the end of it that we're going to have our point. It says Shlamim Kishu Shalim Mevi Veina Mevi Kishu Einin. Brisa says that you can only bring a karban shlamim when you're at peace, but not if the person's an einin. Minayin l'Rabbi says a taida. How do you know that the same halacha would apply to a karban taida, a Thanksgiving offering? Remember the 4 people that bring the karban taida.
When it says shalom here, it means peace. It doesn't mean whole.
It means whole, but it means whole in his mind. Shalom b'daita.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
I translate it as peace. It means at ease. So, how do you know the taida would have the same halacha? Well, the taida is really a shlamim, but it says marben yaseh taida shkei nachals b'simcha because the kishlamim, because the taida is eaten b'simcha. It says in the pasuk something about simcha by the taida, so he has to be at ease in his mind, not when he's an einin. Minayin l'Rabbi says oila. How do you know the same halacha applies to oila? That an einin can't bring a karban oila. Because there's a similarity to the shlamim, that it can be brought as a donation. Minayin l'Rabbi is b'char meiser Pesach. Now we're going to get in trouble over here because it says the word Pesach. All right. How do you know that an einin can't bring a b'char meiser Pesach? Marbeni b'char meiser Pesach shkenein boin al chet. Similar to a karban shlamim, that it's not brought because of a sin. Minayin l'Rabbi is chatas v'asham. How do you know a chatas and asham also an einin can't bring? It is brought for a sin. It's very different than a shlamim. Talmud Laimar Zevach. It says by the karban shlamim im Zevach shlamim karbanai, which means a sacrifice. And it also says so it says Zevach by the shlamim, which is coming to include also the chatas would have the same malacha that it can only be if he's at peace, not if he's a einin. Minayin l'Rabbi says ha'ifes v'menachas ha'yayin v'eitzim v'alavayna. How do you know the same thing would apply to all these other types of donations? The birds and the mincha and the wine and the wood, which I think is referring to the karban. If a person donates wood, he brings a karban as well. Usually this person brings a karban, and along with that comes secondary things. Here he brings wood, and along with that comes the secondary thing, a karban. So valvaina, and the same is with if he donates lavaina. Talmalaymar shlamim karbani. It says in the pasuk shlamim karbani, which is kol karbanis shumevi. He only brings it if he's at peace, at ease in his mind, not if he's an einin. Okay. Tanimia, nevertheless, it was taught in one of the this long brisa. One of those sentences was one clause was Pesach. Tanimia Pesach. that it doesn't bring a carbon pesach. Now, how did this brisa start? It started with Reb Shimon Aimer. Reb Shimon holds that it doesn't bring carbon pesach. Obviously, it's because Aninas Laila is a daraisa. Amar Rav Chisda says Pesach Kedin Aspa. That was just said along because there was a whole list. It says Abchor v'Amaiser, so it threw in Pesach even though Pesach wasn't really in the list. We had that like 2-3 days ago. Kedin Aspa, we said. And we said it because of the list. Rav Sheshes, that was Rav Chisda's answer. Rav Sheshes Amar, Sheshes says, my Pesach, Shalmi Pesach. When we said over there Pesach, we didn't mean the carbon Pesach. We meant karbanas that are brought on Pesach together with the carbon Pesach, not the Pesach itself. We meant the carbon Chagiga, which is brought if there's a large group that's by the carbon Pesach. The carbon Pesach is supposed to be brought, it was supposed to be eaten for dessert. So the people have to fill up on another type of meat. So they would bring shlamim, shalmi chagiga. And then the last kazayas, they would get a piece of the carbon pesach. The shalmi chagiga they don't bring if it's if he's a nainin. Ihachi hainu shlamim. 1 second. That's a regular shlamim. The Gemara says tana shlamim baba machmas pesach, tana shlamim baba machmas atzman. We wanted to say both possibilities because there's a shlamim that comes on its own, a shlamim that comes together with the Pesach. If you wouldn't say the shlamim that comes together with the carbon Pesach, it could have entered your mind to say, go for the Pesach tummy. Could have thought that anything that comes along with the carbon Pesach would have the status of the carbon Pesach. It should be brought anyway. So Kamash Malan comes to teach me that he doesn't bring the Shalmei Chagiga, the Shalmei Pesach. Rav Mari Yamar, Rav Mari gives us another teretz. Yeah, the first teretz, Rav Chisda. Yeah, Rav Shesh's teretz is, so far we have Rav Chisda's teretz, that ignore that was just part of the list. Rav Shesh's teretz, that it was not talking about the carbon Pesach. Now Rav Mari says, Leikasha. Mari gives us a whole theory over here. Kan shemeis lemeis biyadalid, recovery biyadalid. Story was where the Einin can't bring the carbon Pesach. That's talking about where the relative died on the 14th, and he was buried also on the 14th. And Kan, the brisa that says that the Aninas Laila is only the Rabbanan where he's allowed to bring the carbon Pesach. That shemeis lemeis biyad gimel, recovery biyadalid. You have a new opinion over here. It goes like this. The person died on the 13th and he was buried on the 14th. So meis b'yudalid v'kav b'yudalid yem misatafis leila mideraisa. You hear Reb Shimon's going to hold that the night is actually a deraisa. Not the way we said before.
Right.
However, meis b'yudgimel kav b'yudalid yem kura miderabanan. It's only the day and the night that is the deraisa, but the burial, the day of the burial, is only rabbinic. Aninas is only one day. The day of the burial is only rabbinic. So Eina Teifes Leila Elam Midirabanan. So on the rabbinic day, it only catches the night rabbinically.
Excuse me. What carbon is being brought at night now? What's the subject here? What carbon is this?
We're talking about if you can bring the carbon Pesach, even though he's an Einin, but he's only a rabbinic Einin. Why is he only a rabbinic Einin? Because it's the Yom HaKfura, not the Yom HaMisa.
But isn't this a new idea for us that someone could bring a carbon at night?
So the carbon Pesach is the exception to that because it's brought in the afternoon and it's eaten at night. So he's sending it. He's the one. He's not offering. He's not doing the service. He's sending the sacrifice, but he's going to be eligible at night to eat it.
But most of the carbonos can be eaten at night. I don't understand what the big deal is here.
Yeah, what we're saying is that an einin at night is we were thinking before that an einin at night is rabbinic, and but nevertheless you don't eat the carbon, and the rabbis would say that can you send the carbon for that night? No, an einin we said doesn't even send his karbanos, right? Because when he sends it, he's not eligible.
And anybody else with a different kind of carbon, is that also rabbinic at night?
So by any carbon, we would say don't bring it when he's an einin. Carbon Pesach is a mitzvah saseh that has kares. It's very strict. So we say that you send the carbon anyway. We don't want you to miss out on that. And at night, it's when it's going to be rabbinic, you'll be able to partake of it.
No, I'm sorry, I'm not being clear. In general, carbonos are not brought at night.
Right.
So what is more strict about saying an onain doesn't bring his carbon at night?
Now the einin can't bring the carbon by day that'll be eligible to be eaten by night, even though it's only rabbinic. We're asking, the einin is not doing his own service. He's sending the carbon with someone else. We say that you can't do that because at night he won't be eligible to eat it, even if it's rabbinic. However, if it's a carbon Pesach, we say that by night he will be eligible to eat it because the mitzvah of the carbon Pesach overrides the anina slaila, which is midrabanan. Okay, that's tumah. That has to do with tumah. That's the aninas isn't a din in tumah. Aninas is it's not because he's tameh because his relative died. It has to do with his state of mind. It's not because he came in contact with the corpse. It's a different halacha. There is a halacha about coming in contact with the corpse. It's going to come up soon, but here we're talking about where just the state of mind. Just he's a nainen. You shouldn't be bringing the carbon. Now it turns out that okay, wait, we're going to have something coming up soon. So it's going to be a baya. It's going to confuse us a little bit. But meanwhile, what we're learning now is that the second day after the death, the close relative is an einin midrabanan. That's how we're resolving this contradiction. That when did the person die? Either he's still an einin, but it was only rabbinic. That was because he died yesterday. Omle Ravashi le Rav Mari. Ravashi says to Rav Mari, you're getting yourself into a knot. You're getting into a difficult situation because the way that you're explaining it, you won't be able to go back and understand the conversation with Reb Shimon and Reb Yehuda. Reb Yehuda said, Aninas Laila is deraisa. Comes along Reb Shimon and says, I'll prove it to you that it's derabanan. The way I'll prove it to you is derabanan because you know that someone could send his carbon, an einin can send his carbon Pesach, right? Einin toivel vaychlas b'schil erev. The einin can eat the carbon Pesach. He can go to the mikveh, eats the carbon Pesach that evening. So he says like this: Belahadik tani. Yeah, just the carbon Pesach, right? Belahadik tani. Amali Reb Shimon. Reb Shimon says, Teda. I'll prove it to you. Shamar einin toivel vaychlas b'schil avalei b'kadshim. He can only eat the carbon Pesach, not the kadshim. 1 second. So this is going to be a proof for Reb Shimon against Reb Yehuda. Namelay, let Reb Yehuda stay back, like immediately retort. Say, Kamina lachana yem misa daraisa. You're not answering me what I'm talking about. I told you that Aninas Laila is a daraisa. I was talking about if he passed away by day, that night is a daraisa. Va'amrit liyat yem kvura derabanan. You're telling me that tomorrow is rabbinic.
Yeah.
So why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda immediately respond that says your proof is about tomorrow? I'm talking about tonight. The Gemara says kasha. That's a strong question.
They lived at the same time.
Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Same with Murray.
Oh, Rav Ashi and Rav Mari. Yeah, I guess so. Because Rav Ashi tells Rav Mari this. Rav Ashi tells Rav Mari that you're explaining a contradiction in Reb Shimon, but you won't be able to explain the conversation with Reb Yehuda.
this is Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Shimon, in the.
Yeah, Rabbi Yehuda means Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi
So it
Lai.
took 300 years for almost the last guys of the Amorim to bring up this topic.
No, because this topic was already discussed by Rav Chisda, and it was discussed also by Rav Sheshes, who are earlier. Yeah. And then Rav Murray suggests, and later he suggests his own answer. Rav Ashi says that your answer is not a good answer.
Yeah, because Rav
They're later. Yeah.
in the
Right,
last
that's what I'm
50
saying.
years.
Okay. Abaya, we jump back. Abaya has another teretz. He says like Kasha. Talking about carbon Pesach being brought when he's a Nainan. Can he not? Can, when do we say that he's not allowed to bring it? He's talking about where the relative passed away before Chatzais. Can, Chatzais. Here he passed away after Chatzais. Let's say the Gemara spells it out. Before Chatzais, he wasn't able to bring the carbon Pesach. He becomes an Einan. So we say the Aninas takes effect, and it knocks off the obligation to do the carbon Pesach. He's exempt from the carbon Pesach. But after Chatzais, we are the Echsil Pesach, that before he became an Einan, he already had an obligation to bring the carbon Pesach, like Chayla Aninas, so the Aninas doesn't come on him, and he still has to do the what. Because whichever one came first, did the Aninas come first, or the obligation to bring the carbon Pesach? The Aninas came first, so then he doesn't do the carbon Pesach. If the carbon Pesach came first, because it's already after Chatzais, so then he continues to bring the carbon Pesach.
Yeah, this Chatzos is like midnight.
Midday. This is midday.
Yeah.
Midday, because
And then what's the one called at night?
Chatzais as well.
Yesterday.
It's all right.
So they both called Chatzos.
Yeah. Yesterday the fireworks were at Chatzais.
Nice point.
That's New Year's. It's the fireworks at Chatzais.
Yesterday wasn't.
Right. I still heard fireworks at Chatzais.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
New Year.
Okay.
I know my daughter. That's
No, it's only the one that comes first pushes off the one that comes second. That's according to this. Mina Tamra. Gemara asks, where do you come up with this? From where do you say the shani lay bein kaidem chatzos bein la chatzos that there's such a difference? Where do you get this? The Tanya comes from a brisa. Brisa says lo yitama, talking about should a kayan become tamei to his close relatives. It says to her he becomes tamei. Mitzvah that this is a mitzvah to become tamei. Lo yiratza. Let's say he says, no, I want to be extra holy. I want to be frum. I'm not going to go to the funeral of a close relative. They force him to go. Yeah. Maisa Yosef Akayan, there was a person Yosef Akayan. His wife passed away on Erev Pesach. That's a tough situation. He didn't want to go to the funeral. He wanted to bring the carbon Pesach. Nimnu Echav Akayan V'Temu Bal Karchay. And the brothers to the Kayanim got together and they made him become Tameh. They forced him to go.
They ignored his whole mind. It's okay, he didn't get contaminated, but still.
So Hill's bringing up what the Gemara wants to bring from this. 1 second, he's a Nainen. What was his issue anyway? Maybe he doesn't bring the carbon anyway. He's not going to bring it now because he's Tamei, right? But he wanted to bring the carbon Pesach, so he didn't want to become Tamei. But he's an Einin. Okay, but there's a contradiction. Now we jump to a Nazir, which has similar halachas. And the Nazir also, he's not supposed to become Tamei to relatives. Over there, the Nazir is not supposed to become Tamei. The Kayan does become Tamei to relatives. The Nazir does not. It says, La'chaisai. Over there, the pasuk says, "La'chaisei," he doesn't become tamei. Why does it have to say that it doesn't become tummy to the sister? It says already you don't become tummy to the father, the mother, not the sister. It's coming to tell me like this. If a person was going to Shech the Karban Pesach and also to do a circumcision on his son, if he doesn't do a circumcision on his son, he can't bring the Karban Pesach. The whole family needs to be circumcised to bring the Karban Pesach.
Yeah.
But he hears that a relative passed away. Yachal Yitama. Maybe he should become Tameh. We're talking about over here, he's a Nazir. We said also, did I tell you he's a Kohen Gadol? It says over there he's a Kohen Gadol as well. So he's got two reasons not to become Tameh. Wants to bring the Karban Pesach, wants to do the Milah. Yachal Yitam, maybe he should become Tameh. Amrit, La Yitam. It says that he doesn't become Tameh. Yachal Kshem Shla Yitam La'achaysa Yen Metam L'Meis Mitzvah. Maybe the halacha would apply that just like he doesn't become tummy to a close relative, also if he finds a corpse along the road, maybe he shouldn't become tummy to the mace mitzvah, a corpse that has no one to bury it. Right? We said that by a mace mitzvah he does become tummy. The Talmud Laimar, so therefore the pasuk says, La chaysai, to his sister he doesn't become tummy, which teaches me La chaysu deina matama, of a matama la mace mitzvah, but he does become tummy to a mace mitzvah. So what we're seeing over here is that it would be a mitzvah to become tamei. Before we learned that that it's a mitzvah to become tamei to his close relative. Yeah. Even though he has an obligation to bring the Karban Pesach, which means that the tumah pushes off the obligation to become tamei. Let's call it the aninas. His obligation for his relative. Problem is over here he's a kohen gadol. He's not supposed to come tamei anyway. Second.
In English, it looks like the fact that he does contaminate himself
To the mace mitzvah.
mace mitzvah, which we're learning by the fact that it said that he's not metam himself to his sister. Therefore, that takes precedence over the fact that he's going to get chorus.
I'll tell you the pshat. I'll tell you the pshat is like this. The pshat is like this. The Gemara is assuming that each one of these reasons independently should be enough, because it goes like this: he's a nazir, and he's a kohen gadol, and he's going to shecht his Karban Pesach. The fact that he's going to shecht his Karban Pesach itself should be enough to push off, just like the kohen gadol is enough to push off that he shouldn't become tamei. Just like the nazir is enough to push off that he shouldn't become tamei. Also, the fact that he's going to shecht the Karban Pesach should be enough to push off that he shouldn't become tamei. We're seeing that the Karban Pesach overrides the tumah. The obligation that he has as a relative gets pushed off because of the Karban Pesach, and
Yeah, but that raised the question. So why? So.
So then that tells me the mace mitzvah. The problem is that the brisa before said that the obligation of a relative is to become tamei. Here we're even when there's a Karban Pesach that's at stake, and here we're saying that a Karban Pesach at stake would push off the obligation to become tamei. Okay. So, Elav Shmamina. So we have a contradiction between one brayso and another. It must be the way to resolve the contradiction is kan kaidem chatzais. Before chatzais, we would say that you become tamei because you didn't have the obligation to bring the carbon pesach. Kan lachar chatzais, but after chatzais, we already had the obligation to bring the carbon pesach. And that's what the other brayso is talking about. Is that would override the tumah, override the obligation to become tamei to his relative. That's the obligation. Yeah, the burying of a relative corpse. If it was after chatzais.
Your Korban Pesach and your mother is like flying there.
Right. If it's after chatzais. If it would be before chatzais,
And the bris.
the bris, you can't bring the carbon pesach unless the bris is done. But those two things would be two mitzvahs that you would do before the. The Gemara says, "Mimai, how do you get this? That this is that we're going to prove, basically, because of a contradiction. We need to answer the contradiction, so we came up with the teretz that's now a proof for what we're talking about. Dilma Laila Meimalach. How do you know that that's the pshat? Maybe Idi Acha Chatzais. Maybe both of them are talking about where it's after Chatzais. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Akiva. We have a famous Gemara at the beginning of Maseches Zavachim Daf that says the Tanya. It's quoted in a brisa. It says Lo Yitama. It says to her, Kayan becomes Tameh. To his talking about his wife or his sister. It says to her he becomes Tameh. Rishus. That's voluntary. That's Rabbi Shmuel's opinion. Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Mechaver. Rabbi Kiva says it's an obligation. So this would answer the contradiction. One brisa says that he has to become Tameh to her. That's Rabbi Akiva. The brisa says that he doesn't have to become Tameh to her. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Who says this whole chatzais before chatzais, after chatzais? We have so many other answers that you have no proof that that's the pshat. Does Leisal Kadach? No, it's impossible to say that one brisa is Rabbi Akiva, one brisa is Rabbi Shmuel. The Reisha Dahi Rabbi Akiva K'tanila, because Rabbi Akiva is the one that's saying that brisa that says that you could become tamei. Okay. So say like this. Now we're just going to go through that brisa. The Tanya was started in the brisa. Rabbi Kiva says, we said about regarding a nazir that he's not supposed to become tamei. Rabbi Kiva quotes the pasuk. He says, "Nefesh," it says, "Al nefesh meis leisavai," should not become tamei to a corpse. Nefesh elu akrevim. The nazir doesn't become tamei even if it's relatives. Meis elu arachaikim. These are the people that aren't relatives. He can't become tamei. And then it goes on to say, so it's 1 second. If he doesn't come to his ribs, because we already said nefesh, he doesn't come to me to anyone else. So why does it have to now continue to say la'aviv? So it says to the father, it says, it's coming to tell me it's only to the father he doesn't become tummy, but to a meis mitzvah he does become tummy. So then why does it have to say le'imai to the mother? It says it's coming to add in one more detail. It says hayakayan v'u nazir. Let's say he has two issues. He's a kayan and he's also a nazir. So le'imai yudeinu matama. So because he's a nazir, he doesn't become tummy to the mother of matami le'meis mitzvah, but he still becomes tummy to a meis mitzvah. So the extra, the Aviv only told me that he would still become tummy to a meis mitzvah. The Imai tells me even if he's a kayan, he goes to become tummy. He becomes tummy to a meis mitzvah.
Even if he's a kayan.
La'achiv, he's a kayan and a nazir.
And even if he's a nazir.
Yeah, right. No, but we're talking about nazir, and we said already that a nazir becomes tummy to the meis mitzvah. So why do you have to say le'imai? It says even throw into it also he's a kayan. What does it say la'achiv? So we throw into it another status. It says Shema Yakain Gadol Bu Nasir Lachav Udeina Matam Matam Lameis Mitzvah. What's implied from it that he only doesn't become tummy to the brother, but he still becomes tummy to the meis mitzvah. Lachaisai. Why does it have to say his sister? He doesn't become tummy. Matam Alaymar. What's that coming to teach me? So it says. Let's say someone is. This is the brisa that we were quoting before. Let's say someone is going to Shechtas Korban Pesach, and to circumcise his son, which he has to do before he brings the carbon pesach, and then he hears that a relative passed away. Yachal yitama, maybe he should become tamei. Amrit lo yitama, says no, he doesn't become tamei. Yachal kshem shem metamel achayis gachein metamel meis mitzvah. Maybe you shouldn't become tamei to a meis mitzvah. Talmud Laimar la'achayis la'achayis lo yitama metamel meis mitzvah. So this brisa itself that tells me that he doesn't become tamei even though he has the obligation is Rabbi Akiva itself who holds that there is an obligation. So you can't tell me that this brisa is Rabbi Shmuel because it's Rabbi Akiva that was saying the whole brisa. That we're back to what's the teretz? That the teretz would be it's before chatzos or after chatzos. Rava Amar, Rava says another teretz in the contradiction in Reb Shimon. If a contradiction in Reb Shimon, if someone that's an Aina and brings the carbon pesach, he doesn't bring the carbon pesach. Yeah, we say like this: Edi both cases where Reb Shimon says he does bring the carbon pesach, he doesn't bring the carbon pesach, is lacha chatzos. Talking about where his relative passed away on the 14th after noon. And so before we were saying that if it's afternoon, then he continues to bring the carbon pesach. Now he says, "V'lei kasha." It's still not a contradiction because kan koydem sheshachtu v'zarku alav. When do we say that he doesn't bring it? That's because he passed away before the shechita in the zrika. Kan lacher sheshachtu v'zarku alav. But here it's already shechted, so then he's allowed to continue and eat it. Amlei Ravada bar Masna l'Rava acher shechachtu v'zarku es damai madhava hava. 1 second. If the carbon pesach was already brought and he wasn't an einin yet, everything was all done fine. So then, what's your issue? What's the issue? I think what he's asking is that just don't let him eat the. He doesn't. The eating of the carbon pesach is not ma'akiv. It's a mitzvah to eat, but that's like a mitzvah to eat other karbanos. The mitzvah to bring. The mitzvah to bring is something that's very strict. If you don't bring it, it's a kares. But it was brought already. So why do the sages need to say, "Oh, you're allowed to eat it"? Once it's brought, you're allowed to. So it says, "My dahava hava."
I mean, the bigger mitzvah was the bringing.
The bringing it was the big mitzvah. So Amalei Ravina responds to this. He says back to Ravada bar Masna, who was asking Rava. He says, "Achilas psachim ma'akva." Midirabba bar Rav Huna. No. This is following the opinion of Rabba bar Rav Huna, who holds that the eating of the carbon pesach is ma'akiv. Omar lei, Rabba says to Ravada bar Masna that was asking after Ravina gave him the teretz. He says, "Sayas madaka amalach Rabbach." Listen to Ravina. He gave you a good teretz. Like he answered on behalf of Rava. He says. My the Rabba bar Rav Huna, what's the story with Rabba bar Rav Huna that he holds that the eating of the carbon pesach is ma'akiv? Titania, started in a brisa. Yom Shmua. Someone hears that a relative passed away, so there's 2 options here. There's called the Shmua Kreiva and Shmua Recheka. Shmua Kreiva is if he hears about it within the first 30 days, and Shmua Recheka is if he hears about it after 30 days. It goes like this. Yom Shmua Kiyom Kvura. It's like the day of the burial. The mitzvah shiva l'shleishim. That means he has to count. He has to sit shiva if he hears that a relative passed away. This we're talking about within the 30 days, and he also has to have the avelus of shleishim, which means that he doesn't wash the clothing and cut the hair and all of that. Ulachilas psachim. Ulachilas psachim. Kiyayim. And it comes to eating the carbon pesach, if he hears that a relative passed away, then that would be considered like the day that the bones were collected to move to another place. Whether it's the day of the burial, whether it's the day of the likat atzamis, of the moving of the body, he's allowed to go to the mikveh.
Just bring that as an extra reference. Like, what's this?
Why do we mention the Yom Kippur? Oh, likat atzamis. Well, we're saying that the Likat Atzamas is an example of someone that during that day, he has the laws of Shiva, but at night he doesn't.
Is that, I'm down to halakha today. I'm saying with respect to the day of hearing being like the day of Gevurah.
Yeah, if it's within the first 30 days. And Likat Atzamas is also a day of mourning. Yeah, it's brought in Shulchan Aruch. I don't know exactly the details, but the Gemara asks, 1 second, Haguf Kasha. It seems to be a contradiction. Yom Shmua Kiyom Kvura Mitzvah Shiva L'Shleishim. The day of hearing of the bad news is like the day of the burial regarding the Avelas, right? La'achilas Psachim. When it comes to eating a carbon Pesach, it's not considered like the day of the burial. It's considered like the day of moving the bones. Michlal. But that would imply the Yom Kippur Afil Erev Nami Layachal. Why do you have to tell me that it's Kiyom Likat Atzamas? Because you wanted to tell me at night you're allowed to eat the carbon Pesach. But Yom Kivura, if it would be the day of the burial, then at night you won't be able to eat. But then you tell me that whether it's a Yom Kivura or whether it's Likat Atzamas, by both of them you eat the carbon at night. So then why do you have to switch it to Likat Atzamas if by the same one you eat it at night? Amar Rav Chizda Tanaihi. Chizda says that if the Yom Kivura eats it at night, it's a Machlekes Tanan. Okay. Rabbi Barhuna says like Kasha. Kan Shama Shmuel Meisai Samach L'Shkias Achama. Over here, where we said that it's like Likat Atzamas, it's because he heard that this relative passed away close to the Shkia. Same thing would apply if the bones were collected and reburied close to Shkias Chama. Or if someone passed away yesterday, we're talking about, and he was buried today close to Shkias Chama, then we would say that there's no aninus by night, and you'd be allowed to eat the carbon. And over there where we're saying where you won't be able to eat it if it was buried before Shkia, that's Lachar Shkia Sachama, that the burial took place after Shkia on Yudalid, which means we're talking about now that it was after Shkia the night before, which makes the entire Yom Yudalid the day of Aninas, and then the Lel Tesvav, the night after the Yudalid, right? The carbon is shechted on Yudalid. The night after Yom Tesvav, he won't be able to eat from the carbon Pesach because that's the day of the death. That's a different type of aninas. La'achar Shkias Achama, the Gemara says 1 second. The Gemara is starting off thinking that it's Lachar Shkias. The Gemara is saying that it's Lachar Shkias Achama means the 14th by night, which is already the 15th. The Gemara says Lachar Shkias Achama may dahava hava. What's the difference? It was already shechted. It must mean, why are you telling me a halacha over here regarding it's not the night before. It's talking about the night of Pesach, where he passed away after Shkias Chama, saying that he won't be allowed to eat from Korban Pesach. That's because Achilas Psachim is Ma'akva. And that's what we were looking for, where Rabba Bar Ravuna holds that the Achilas Pesach, the eating of the Korban Pesach, is essential, and it affects the validity of the carbon. Rashi says,
meaning that the whole korban must be consumed by people.
Yeah. Rashi Amar, what does it mean that whether this, whether that? We said before, we were talking about whether it's the burial or whether it's the day that the bones were moved. It's called Likat Atzamas. He's going to be able to eat at night. But Rashi said, what does it mean? It's not the day of the burial. Talking about the day that he heard about the bad news, or and the day of the Likat Atzamas. Then but the day of the burial, he's not going to be able to eat at night. Ravashi, this teretz that you just gave me, that Ravashi says bedusahi is a famous Gemara. This means it's a mistake. Some say that it's supposed to be barusa. Bedusa is like a joke.
A joke, right?
It's like a joke. It's not. It can't. You can't take
Make
it
it up.
In
serious.
English, they write a fiction.
Fiction
Whoa.
could
It's the
be.
first fiction.
There's another Girsa. It says Bedusa. The one is Barusa. One is Bedusa. One is Barusa. Barusa means that take it outside. Bar. Bar means like.
Whoa.
It says Michti. 1 second. Allah Kai. We're talking about the a shmua. So what is zevazemi bayile? How do you say this and this when that's what you're talking about? You don't even need the pronoun this and this. Elish mamina bedusi. Rather, it must be
Someone
just
pulled
a
a joke.
mistake. I said before.
They had jokesters in those days.
Jews.
Do as much as you
Jews
can.
are funny.
Because we have to catch up by some.
Why? Oh, Sunday night is.
By Stefan.
Maybe he's behind. I heard he's behind.
Yeah,
Sometimes.
he's behind.
He'll be. He'll be.
We don't set our course by Rebbe's.
Who's the Stefanski? Who's that?
Yeah, who's Stefanski?
Let's leave. Let's leave it
Why
over
would
here
you
by
say
my
that?
tanai. Let's leave it
Who's
by my
this guy?
tanai.
The worst thing you can do to a famous person.
Ouch.
You really don't know.
You
familiar
see
with.
what we're holding?
He probably has the largest.
It's like in middle of
following
Kuf Hamid
of
Beis.
the only
22.
people in
Yeah.
the world. And
Because
if you go on